That was about 4 months after she gave it to me. So I ended up getting a new one because she had bought insurance on it. Oh, very fine.
I think we're hot.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to a square dance there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Liz, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Thanks, Mary.
Janine LaPrade,
Here.
Marty Mayes,
Here.
Lisa Pappas is not here, Tim Redmond not here, John Reiser,
Present up here at the Zoom camera.
Will Weber,
Here.
and Lee Wiseman is here, and Barry is here.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda from our last meeting. Everybody have a chance to look through that. Thank you, Liz, for a clear presentation of what we did.
Agenda, you mean the
This is
minutes?
the agenda first. We'll do the
Okay.
agenda first.
Oh,
All right.
yeah. Moving
Approval of
minutes
the
or
agenda, all right, sorry. Approval of the agenda. Anybody have any comments or corrections or changes or additions to the agenda as presented?
I move the agenda.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Now approval of the minutes. Comments on the minutes? Looked good to me. We talked a little bit about it and I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Motion to accept.
So move.
Thank you, Marty. Second.
Second.
Jean? All right. Moved and seconded. No more discussion. Approval. Everyone in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. So public comments. Are there people out there who would like to talk? Kathleen? Rob?
Any visitors?
I think Rob was planning on being
Kathleen's here. I'm looking at the participant. I see Christie, I see Kathleen. I'm asking her to unmute in the event that she wants to.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kathleen.
well, we're happy to have you.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thanks, Kathleen.
All right, it appears there's no one who has anything to say from the public, so we could have a little discussion of a project that Dave Hutton, our guest here, has been involved in. That there's been a fair number of meetings with a lot of people. The map that you received is the reference, is what we're going to talk about. Barry, you want to tell us a little bit about where you see this standing?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this property for a while in its current configuration. We've been talking about this property for a much longer time and under various configurations.
Wait a minute, are you changing the agenda?
No,
So this is as per discussion of Baker Road project.
Yeah.
Roman numeral 6.
Oh, this is an old agenda.
Oh,
That's what it is.
That's why, sorry,
yeah,
I have the wrong agenda.
Here, let's just share this. Here, let's share this.
I'm going
This is one of the minor changes.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Barry.
so as I indicated in my report to you all in the closed session, but we're dealing with this in open session at the request of Mr. Lutton. We met again a couple of weeks ago, about 10 days ago, actually, and it was Dave and me, Sean Keogh, who's the mayor of the city of Dexter, Will Hathaway, supervisor here in Scio Township, and Dave's consultant, Tom Covert from Midwestern Consulting, and talked about a potential approach to this entire property, which, as you know, spans Baker Road, with the lion's share of it being on the east side, but about 21 acres or so on the west side that's surrounded by our preserve. We were informed at that meeting that the owners, which is Baker Road Land Holdings LLC, has entered into a purchase agreement to sell approximately 87 acres of the property to this nonprofit organization called Many Hands Learning Community. It's a different different DBA, but that's the ultimate owner of the property, and that's what's depicted in the light yellow here on the drawing that Dave has provided for us. And I also sent around to everybody the PDFs showing different maps that Tom Covert provided previously. So there's 4 different maps there, one of the entire property in the breakout, and then the other ones, the 3 different pieces of it. Many Hands being one of them. So that, as I said, the Baker Road folks have entered into a purchase agreement for those 87 acres with many hands. The owners, Mr. Lutton and his partners, are interested in doing a high density development in the northeast corner of the property. That's sort of the tan color, I guess I would call it. And annexing that to the city of Dexter, and having public water and sewer lines run to that property. And then the remainder of the property, which is the green here on your depiction, would be sold to Scio Township for its ownership as a natural area, with the opportunity to not only conserve the woods on the property, which is the vast majority of the part on the east side of Baker, but also some open space property on the north side, and allow us to link up the city of Dexter with the other properties that we've conserved over the years that run all the way down to Marshall Road. We bought the Loveland property last year, I think it was. Yeah, just about a year ago. The fronts here on Marshall Road, we bought a piece of woods from Mercer Road before that. Those two connect. We've got an access easement across the northeast corner of the Levine and Kempter property that we can utilize as long as we have access from the east and to the north. We have it to the east at this point. This would provide us with the access to the north and be able to link up all the way to the city of Dexter, potentially all the way over to the Sloan Preserve as well, as there is frontage on Baker Road for this proposed purchase of ours. And that's just across the road from our preserve. And in doing so, would provide an important link in the what we've quietly been calling the Dexter Green Belt for many years. We've been more or less surrounding the city of Dexter with conserved land, and this would further that pursuit of ours over many years now. Mr. Lutton is under advisement that we would need to obtain an appraisal for the land that we would be purchasing from him. He was also under advisement that, as we all I think are aware, there are some contamination issues on the 21 acres on the west side of Baker Road that were identified many years ago when we were buying the two pieces of the preserve that we now own.
Where, with reference to the map, that area of contaminated soil, where is that in the map?
Is that shown, Dave?
Yeah, it's on the left of Baker Road, isn't it?
Is it east,
Yes.
west of Baker Road?
It's the west of Baker Road
It's
piece.
the whole area west of Baker Road?
Yeah.
That's the 21 acres. I'm not sure if this shows where the soil issues are.
It doesn't show anything regarding the contamination, but honestly, at this point, I don't have clear knowledge exactly where the contamination is. Several people are looking to find a report that Atwell Hicks apparently did on this property years ago for a previous owner. We're hopeful of obtaining that. We've begun consultation with AKT Peerless in Farmington that handles mitigation of contaminated sites. And as I said to you beforehand, I'm not viewing this as your problem as the purchaser of this land. We would assume that we would do the mitigation.
Okay. So it's basically
It's an arsenic problem for anyone who doesn't know that.
arsenic.
From apple
Unknown.
trees? Is that from apple trees?
Possibly, apparently there was a tree farm, although I think it was, I don't think it was apple trees. I think it may have been pine or spruce trees that were sprayed at some
I
point.
know in Loch Alpine, there's arsenic.
Yeah, well, there's also a theory that this site was used for fill back in the late 50s, early 60s, whenever I-94 was constructed, and that may have been part of the cause. We're in the process of contracting with AKT Fearless to really get a handle on what's there and what the solutions can be.
There's also naturally occurring arsenic in upper soil layers throughout this area. And one of the other thoughts from years ago was that the Sloans, when they had ownership of the property, moved topsoil off of part of this area in order to access gravel for sale or use. And in doing so, perhaps just piled up the topsoil that contains the arsenic and hence concentrating it. We don't know the sources of it. When we were looking at buying those two pieces of preserve 10 or plus years ago, Dick Sloan had no recollection of any tree farms or highway tailings or anything like that. So it's an unknown source. But the study that Dave referenced from Atwell from, again, 10 plus years ago, indicated that there were some extremely high levels of arsenic in the soil.
Has the rest of the area proposed here been tested for arsenic and come up okay?
The green area,
Well, I guess I'm thinking the green, the yellow, and the brown. I mean, I was just curious how extensive the evaluation was that turned up the arsenic on the other side.
it was only, to my knowledge, on the west side of Baker Road that those studies were done. I don't know of any studies on the east side from years ago. And arsenic, of course, being an element, doesn't deteriorate over time. It's present in the soil and it ain't going anywhere. The good news, I remember from some years ago, was that we had tests done on the 21 acres. Again, as we were considering purchasing that as part of the Sloan Preserve purchase, we had tests done of the water in the pond that's on that 21 acres. We had tests done of the sediments at the bottom of the pond. And there was no abnormal levels of arsenic in those locations. So apparently it just is in the soil and it's not migrating out of the soil. But it is in the soil and ain't going anywhere, just by the nature of an element of that kind.
Is that in the map here?
It's right here. It's not
It,
designated where it is, but it's in there.
it's not where the cross lines are.
I don't know where the cross lines are. And it's pretty small print, so I'm not sure that I could tell you.
I don't either.
Yeah,
The other thing from our view is that conservation of the property is the best possible future use of a property with any kind of a problem. In that with arsenic, I believe you have to be in direct contact with the material to suffer any ill effects. And certainly walking trails or what might get put on this property would be a low use and wouldn't involve a lot of direct contact for people with contaminated soils. So, you know, we're open to finding a solution, but we're pleased not to be proposing residential or commercial use. That would be harder to mitigate probably.
as you can see, there's quite a lot of additional frontage on Mill Creek in that 21 acres. And you know, we bought 33 acres on the south initially, and then 17 acres on the north. So we have a 50-acre preserve there at this point. This would add obviously 20 acres to that and conserve all of that creek frontage. And I'll remind you that Mill Creek from Parker Road, which is the western boundary of Scio Township, down to Shield Road, which is downstream of this property, is designated as a state natural river by the state of Michigan. It's part of the Huron River designation, excuse me. But that stretch, so not from Shield down to the city of Dexter, nor all the way to where Mill Creek runs into the Huron River, but this upstream section from Parker to Shield is a state natural river.
Barry, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time situating this on this map.
Let me help you. If you look at the southernmost corner of the yellow on the handout, Directly across the street from that corner is the old Sloan's Nursery. It's now Lotus Nursery.
Okay,
Actually, I think it's Bloom Nursery now. It's the other way around. It's changed. I think it might be Bloom now.
The sign said Lotus a couple of
Maybe it's
weeks
Lotus
ago.
now. I get them all mixed
Okay.
up. But yeah, you're right. It is Lotus. It was Bloom and now it's Lotus. It's been through several ownerships. You're looking at the protected lands map?
Yeah.
And you see the Sloan Preserve on there?
yeah,
So this is immediately, well, it's the piece that is on Mill Creek that's not the preserve on the
Okay.
west side. And then the bulk of the property is immediately to the east
okay,
of that.
got it, thank you.
So as I said, at the conclusion of this last meeting about 10 days ago with Dave and Will and Sean Scio and Tom Covert and I, we concluded that with Dave's support, that we wanted to have a discussion of this concept.
Folks, I think someone wants in. Lisa Powers.
Yep. That we wanted to have discussion of this concept here at the LPC meeting. The advice from the mayor was at a somewhat nearer time, but hasn't happened yet, for Dave to request annexation of the 45 acres in the northeast corner to the city of Dexter to initiate that process. As I said, the purchase agreement with many hands has been executed. And so the proposal for us to consider at this point is the potential purchase of the area in green on this map.
So 91.2 acres is the consideration for the area west, east of Baker Road.
I believe that's correct. It's very small print.
11 plus or minus total, counting the west side.
Yeah, so out of a 37 acre property in total, we were looking at 100, again, Dave? 111 acres of conserved land.
Can you remind us, Barry, within that green parcel that we're considering, most of it is forest, but is some of it agricultural? I can't recall the image of our visit and how it would
Yeah,
superimpose on this.
we haven't been out there for a while. The application that we got from Dave was, well, I guess only a year ago or so. And
Maybe less than that. We were out there visiting, yeah.
we came in through the Dexter Crossing neighborhood, which is just north of the 45 acres, and parked there. I think that we drove in a bit too, didn't we?
Drove in, yeah.
And we hiked through the woods, got to the fields that are the yellow part. But we didn't really go any further from there. And then you can see, some of the yellow part from Baker Road. So on the east side of the green part, which would basically be an L shape, that's all woods.
Okay.
And then everything to the west of that, along the northern part of the property, is in agricultural use. And that is also where the consumer's pipeline runs through the property.
Saw that, yeah.
And one of the things that Tom Covert is working on is defining the width of that pipeline easement. We had to do the same thing on the Sloan Preserve when we bought that many years ago. These easements go back to the 1950s, typically, sometimes the 60s. And the easement deeds to Consumers Energy say that they have access to your property to maintain the pipeline that's going through it, but it doesn't specify what the width is. Those are called blanket easements. And so theoretically, they could go anywhere on your property to be able to get access to the easement area. What we did on the west side, when we were buying the preserve, was work with Consumers to define that width as 66 feet. On the east side, that width has not been defined, but Tom Covert is in the process of working that out with consumers, so that will be defined. But nevertheless, the pipeline does run through that. That's that line you can see running underneath Baker, coming from Baker Road, and then more or less heading east. There's a couple of little jogs in it. And then going across the 45 acres as well. But everything on the north side of that property that's not woods is in agricultural use.
I have a question about that. Does that mean that you can't put a house or a structure on top of that easement?
That's correct.
So if housing goes in there, they'll have to finagle something around that.
On the 45 acres, that's correct. That's something for them to figure out. Obviously, there's gonna have to be streets that are put across that, which are gonna be concrete. But obviously, if consumers ever need to come through and maintain that line or replace that line or add an additional line, there would have to be disruption of that.
Well, similarly, sort of evaluating the constraints here. I recall two really nice wetland areas that we visited. Are those in the tan area? Is that sort of flat area without contour lines? Is that the wetlands?
Yes, correct.
So that also is
Where are we?
I'm looking up here in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
The wetlands are up in the,
Yeah, so
Okay.
that 45 acres in tan has a couple of spots there. Looks like probably three of them actually, that don't have any contour lines on it.
Yeah.
They're just open, blank, if you will. Those are the wetlands. Obviously, they're essentially level.
So your impression, Dave, is that you'll design and keep the wetlands, or even you can't drain them, right? So you'll work around having them as sort of a feature of the terrain of the development. Okay.
We haven't formalized a plan yet, but we have some models and we're taking that into account. We won't be draining or tampering with wetlands.
Dave, do you have any interest in preserving that 45 acres also?
You can't afford it. I don't mean to be flippant, but this has been a long and winding pathway, and just a year ago, we were advocating, and if the soils were better, we might be executing a high-density residential plan. Your last master plan, which we waited nearly a year for because of COVID delays, designated a gateway district zoning in the Baker Road corridor, and it would have allowed for very dense housing development. I presented one plan to Dexter that was 620 units. Here I am today with 70 or 75 units in this area up in the corner. So it's quite a difference. By background, I am a real estate guy. I've been in the real estate industry for nearly 50 years. For 20 of those years, I owned the Reinhardt Company in Ann Arbor. I am keenly aware of the housing shortfalls that exist in our area and the lack of affordability and what's happening to Dexter and Saline and Chelsea becoming unaffordable for average people, average households. We had designed a plan that would have included 240 apartments and another probably 175 of below median condominiums aimed at both first-time buyers and seniors on fixed incomes. None of that will be addressed by this plan. The housing that will be developed in that northeast corner will look very much like Dexter Crossing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good, solid middle market housing, except that middle market housing now costs north of $500,000. And so I set out to try to accomplish something regarding housing problems in our marketplace. And for a variety of reasons, we are not pursuing that. Many Hands comes along and gives me a different social good that we can accomplish. I don't know how familiar you all would be, but there is a real crisis for housing of developmentally disabled adults. What happens when their parents die? What happens to a 45 or 50-year-old developmentally disabled person? There is an acute need for more housing for that population, and that is what Many Hands is trying to address. So I have shifted my priorities from trying to solve some housing problems in the county. I've been here 56, 57 years now, and as I say, I've spent 50 of those years in the real estate industry. Let me just throw in one other tidbit for this committee because it relates to you. In the year 2000, Barry Lonick and I were original members of the Natural Area Preservation Program of Washtenaw County on the NATAC committee, Natural Areas Technical Advisory Committee. I am the evil real estate and development member of that committee. I am outnumbered 6-1 by conservationists and scientists. But I have served 23 years on that committee. Many of the names that got recited by Barry of lands that have been purchased here in Scio, some of NAP's dollars went into making those purchases with and for Scio. So I have a deep knowledge of the conservation side. I'm still saddened by the fact that I'm not able to do more on the housing circumstances in our county. So, and there's the member of your committee I've known the longest. Hello, Tim.
I'd like to add two things about, if you're done with that. Sure. Dave, I'd like to add two things about the Many Hands proposal. One is that, as I said, there's a purchase agreement to purchase this 87 acres. My understanding is that they have the funds available, or will have it soon available to be able to make that purchase. But the actual development of that property is a much more expensive proposition. And so it's a whole other fundraising process that Many Hands would have to go through to be able to raise the funds to be able to construct the buildings for these facilities. So that's going to take, I would think, several years at least, maybe longer, and would be subject to a site plan process here at Scio Township before the Planning Commission and so forth. So that's not going to happen immediately. The purchase could happen in the short term, but the actual development of the property for that purpose is a longer term prospect. And I've had numerous conversations with the executive director of Many Hands, and Dave's had some as well, about the potential conservation of a good chunk of that 87 acres as well. One of the things that they want to be able to offer to residents of those facilities is being able to get their hands in the dirt and grow food and maybe have a roadside stand or market their products somewhere else. So we've had conversations about a future conservation easement purchase once they raise the funds, come up with a design, get it approved for structures, probably closer to Baker Road, and then the east side of it could potentially be in an agricultural conservation easement in the future. It's all speculation at this point, but that is something that's been actively discussed for quite some time. So I wanted to throw that in also.
Right, and if there is an easement, that's really not something that's part of the current discussion. That will also come later.
It would be an application from Many Hands Learning Community to sell a conservation easement on some portion of that property. And so we would evaluate that just like we evaluate every other application that comes in the door.
Okay.
But again, I think that's probably several years down the road at this point.
So does that mean if this were to go through, the green and the yellow would be kind of purchased as one block, and then potentially down the road, there'd be the sale of the 87 acre nonprofit campus area?
No. So there's essentially three sales here. One is 87 acres to Many Hands in the yellow.
So Lutton sells to Many Hands.
And then they own it and they, raise the funds, get the site plan together, do all their work to create that site.
And that's that's kind of up to him what he does with conservation easements, because he's selling it to them, is that correct?
It's up to many hands to make a proposal to us or application sometime in the future.
Nobody.
They'll buy a fee simple, right?
That's what I'm getting, you're not him, he's him. So, it's up to, so Dave, if you go by Dave or Mr. Luck, I don't want to be disrespectful.
It's fine, but
So Dave, you
we,
would sell that 87 acre parcel to this organization, fee simple?
yes,
Okay.
and they would then make the decision, as Barry has just said, whether or not to do a conservation easement
They
over.
give us the pitch like, hey, we could use some money here, how about a conservation easement? That's down the road.
I think that they recognize a need for money, and I think also their heart is in the right place. They are trying to build a residential / agricultural campus. The agricultural piece is hands-on for the residents, and
Kind of like a Dawn Farm, but for adult development is it. A little bit akin to that.
yeah, akin, I would agree.
And what about water and sewer for that? Are we gonna be faced with or have to deal with connecting to Dexter's or a private sewer system, or, what's available nearby?
The only water and sewer contemplated in these 3 sales would be the residential parcel, the 45 acre parcel, extending Dexter's existing systems.
Bunch of line across the street.
Yeah, exactly, it's there, and so it's not a complex extension. Barry has raised the complexity of all these different transactions. The economics of this parcel, I got into this parcel under less than ideal economic conditions. I am trying to extricate myself, do some good development and extricate myself in one piece. And the 45 acre residential piece is the most valuable of the 3. So in terms of my economics,
Because of proximity to the sewer system or topography or close to the shopping and the other residential, just.
simply because I do not intend to build the homes on this parcel. I intend to sell it to a contractor to build. And the price that an approved parcel with water and sewer and roads will be the most valuable of these 3 parcels. And it is critical to me getting out of this development situation alive financially. I'm being candid with you. I have said to Barry and to the mayor and the supervisor, these are all tied together and one won't happen without the others happening. And that's kind of my only non-negotiable in the whole situation. I don't think you should rush out and get an appraisal on the property yet, because frankly, the preservation piece is the least complicated, ignoring the arsenic situation. You came in late, Tim, but there's arsenic on the west side of Baker Road on 21 acres of this parcel. But from everything I've learned so far about that, there will be ways to mitigate that risk and make it safe for people to walk on paths and so forth on that property.
Is
So
that something that gets done ahead of time, or that's something that gets discussed at a potential sale?
I think certainly it would be part of the sale discussion, and it would be a contractual item, would be the way I would expect it.
Would it be eligible for county brownfield? Or I guess not if we bought it, because we wouldn't be, you know what I mean? I don't know how that would work.
I don't know the answer to that, but it's a good question.
I mean, you might be eligible as a private owner now for brownfield.
Correct.
Relief,
Well, and again, trying to do preservation, that might be an appealing message to be able to give, that the intention is to preserve. So we're open to all of those kinds of discussions.
One of the things that the board is gonna wanna know, and we're struggling, I'm on the board, trustees. So one of the things that the board is grappling with is the private sewer system that's proposed down the road a piece at Marshall and Baker for the proposed Heritage Woods kind of senior living PUD. And whether or not there'll be board support for a private sewer system on that location. So to the extent that anticipated board support for a private sewer on what I'm going to call the yellow parcel, the 87-acre parcel, that's intended to be sewer, septic, private sewer, or can Dexter hook a brother up on that too?
The intention is that it will be well and septic service.
So individual rather than multifamily.
Their plan calls for some large residences, which would be a combination of resident, the developmentally disabled people, and staff housing in the same building, I believe. These would be some large units, but the belief is that it will all be serviced by septic
But
feed.
houses rather than like what's in Ann Arbor on Eisenhower where Packard ties in, or something like this there. It's near the library. There's some housing.
Right, I know the community, lower income housing that you're referring to. I can't think of the name.
They have some housing with on-site care and some residents who need that care who live in that area.
I see. Well, I'm not familiar with that, and I don't want to speak for many hands at this point. As Barry says, they're going to bring an entire site plan and proposal to your planning commission, so.
So, Dave, you've indicated that the whole deal is contingent on everything going through, and you're not looking at, you know, just to Dexter or just to Many Hands or just to LPC. You want everything to be locked down before anything happens. Is that my understanding?
Well, I think I would see things working in parallel, but will the most complicated piece of this is probably the residential parcel, followed by the Many Hands. So I think getting started on those and making our application for annexation, that idea was, in my view, originated with Barry, and I appreciate it as a way of solving the problem. This parcel has been under development discussions for nearly 20 years, and as I say, just less than a year ago, I was presenting a 600+ unit development on it.
And part of the reason we switched gears here is that along the way, not too long ago, we discovered that the capacity of the Dexter sewer system was not capable of handling 600 houses or 400 houses. It's something on the order of 70 houses. And so.
Can handle, so.
Yeah, they've got capacity to do that at this point. And so that's where the idea is like, okay, can we concentrate that development adjacent to the existing city boundary with, the stubs that are already there. Wetlands and some, nice rolling ground, but if we can't save everything, the woods was the primary target for conservation. And then perhaps we'll get some of the, we'll get some agricultural land under this scheme, and perhaps more through the Many Hands future application for a conservation easement.
Well, somebody's farming it now, aren't they? I'm looking at my old photos from our site visit.
Yes, it is farmed, and will be again this year. We're doing some soil work in April, but beginning in May, the farmer will be planting. I don't know if it's corn or soybeans, but I think one or the other.
Well, they've still kind of hung up on this idea of everything being contingent, and that's what makes the deal happen. And you indicate that the residential portion is most challenging. Do you have some kind of sense, like, I mean, we have to budget our funds. We've got other properties that we looking at and we've maybe moved a little farther along on, and it's just so much money. So for us, having a sense of when we'd be expected to come in as partners in making it happen is important. Do you have any way to give us a feeling for, I know you'd like to have it happen tomorrow, but realistically here, are you negotiating with Dexter, obviously? Have they given you a sense of when they'd be ready to work out something?
Not yet, but as Barry has said, the mayor has now been in a couple of meetings on this subject and is inviting us. I will be speaking at Dexter's Council on Monday, the 24th of this month. And that's kind of the beginning. We will probably be submitting a letter requesting annexation at that meeting and getting it going. If I had to conjecture a guess, I'm an old real estate broker. I've done a lot of deals over the years and I know how long things take. I've also got this 23-year perspective on the conservation side, and I appreciate what you're saying about we have to budget our dollars, and probably you want to find some more dollars to add to your funds too. And NATAC, where I will have to recuse myself, is aware of this property. They have walked it also. So back to timing, it would be my hope that 1 year from my presentation to Dexter that we could have an approved site plan for many hands with Scio Township. We could have an approved site plan for the development of the 45 acres and the annexation agreement moved along. I presented to your board months ago now, and the clerk in a rather forceful way told me that she would in no way support giving away Scio Township land. Well, those words are still ringing in my ears. The annexation is important, as I've stated here. There's work, there's a lot more discussion to go. I would see spring, summer of 2024 as probably the earliest that all of these loose ends could be brought to closure. And clearly, Will, as we move through this process, and it's going to be a process for sure, I will be happy to keep Barry and you updated on what's going on and where things stand with each of the pieces of the puzzle. I have been referring to it as a puzzle. It's got three distinct pieces that have to fit together.
So is annexation an important component because Dexter wouldn't otherwise provide water and sewer to that parcel? Like we get water and sewer from Ann Arbor without being annexed, but we have an agreement with them. Is that because Dexter isn't likely to enter into some similar agreement? Question mark?
I can't speak to that, but my gut says you're right.
Okay, I'm just asking.
That's the reason.
But okay.
Yeah. There was discussion of what's called the 425 agreement prior to this proposal emerging. And I will say from my years, from my vantage point, it didn't seem well received. I went so far as preparing a mock-up 425 agreement and took care of where the tax dollars and the utility dollars and so forth would go. And it would be a potential windfall for Scio Township in the mock-up that I did. But that was met with fairly open hostility by some members of the board. And so we have pulled back from that.
So if Dexter annexes it, either through a friendly or hostile takeover, said in jest, but whether one way or the other, if Dexter annexes it, then why do you need us for anything on that parcel that is gonna be annexed anyways. Then wouldn't we really just be talking about the green and yellow parcels on the map?
I believe that's a true statement. The site plan approval for the 45 acres would be going through the Dexter's.
Or our benefit, it is, will be a non-player in that regard.
Well, yes, again, I believe that if this moves forward, that we would be taking it through the planning process with the city of Dexter, not with Scio.
If you have already signed a PSA, purchase and sale agreement with Many Hands though,
Yeah.
that is already completed. So when you say you want everything to happen, on a parallel track, that piece is already finished.
And Many Hands knows that there won't be a closing with them until the other pieces of the puzzle fall in place. So that's.
Okay, so that closing could be postponed for a year.
It could. As I said earlier, I waited a year to get my hands on the new Scio master plan. That was very frustrating. COVID, I understand, the world was delayed. I would hope that all parties to this would get after it and get into this process and move it along in an expeditious fashion. Will is correct. I'd close tomorrow if we were able to do that.
I think just knowing the group and knowing we're into this kind of thing, acquisition of this kind of property. But as I've said, and you're aware, we have a limited budget based on our millage, and we've got other properties. Let's suppose, and this is not an offer, but just trying to understand how the puzzles fit together. Let's suppose we do some other properties, purchases, and whittle our budget down to where we can no longer meet the appraised value that we probably could come to terms on. And we need to pay a little bit over time. In other words, promise you next year you'll get the final 200,000 or something. Could that kind of a deal work into your concept if this were what was going to make or break it for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the part that's farmed now in the yellow zone? Yeah,
Yes, and including the green on the north side of the property. Some of the green is farmed. More of the green is the woods and wetlands area. But yes, all of the yellow and the green from the yellow line, the east line of the yellow to the west, that portion of the green is also farmed.
so this plan would involve eliminating all farming, obviously, unless,
Many Hands intends to farm. I can't give you much detail on that, but that is what we have been told.
them directly, not leasing it out to the farmer.
Right. I'm currently leasing to a farmer, but they would be doing, I believe there is a plan to have a farm manager or a facility manager who would handle the agricultural work.
Farm and not a garden. Not like a little community garden for the residents. Farm.
I think, yes, more serious agriculture than garden
For the Many Hands.
for Many Hands.
What about the square in the southeast corner, the green? Is that planned to be just in conservation somehow, or is there some thought that there might be farming?
I'm sorry, are we here?
It's mostly woods, right?
It's all woods.
It's all woods all the way to the eastern corner?
Yep, that's tree cover, Mark.
Yeah, it's a fabulous woods.
Everything but that part that's north of the yellow. In green, but north of the yellow, through which the pipeline runs right there.
Yeah.
That part is farmland that's being leased and in ag use, but everything that's basically the L-shaped
Yeah,
is all woods.
this is all woods right here.
Yep, and they're going north also.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's all the way up
there.
to, up to the.
Yep.
Dexter
For some
Board.
reason, I thought it was important enough to take a picture of it.
So we would
yeah,
not
that's
be
shag
farming
farming.
this.
Basically, everything that's in tan, there's been some farm use of that, but, and some wetlands, but that's more open. And
What's the acreage of the yellow? That's
87.
87.
Dave, when you submit your letter to the Dexter City Council, will you be asking for an annexation of that property, whether or not Scio Township board agrees to it?
That would be the hostile version of this John referred to.
That's right.
I'll
Which is
just-
legal.
I'll just say it is legal, and I'll just say, Liz, I'm open to either.
But if Scio board does not approve it, then you would
Yes.
be asking Dexter to do it anyway.
Yes, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but we have been patient and things have not moved very quickly. Now they need to move more quickly because of the purchase agreement that we have, because of the interest in the application that we've made with you, and presumably this annexation piece that we'll be talking to council in 10 days about.
Well, then, once you get everything like lined up, once as much of this package deal as you can put together in one transaction or series of transaction, then you sell it to Toll, Lombardo, Pulte, Rexford, whomever, somebody, some like a developer like that to build the houses.
Yes,
Rent some other company.
when the annexation piece is approved, we would market it to the building industry. I will say one more thing, and this is not a promise, but I'm part of an environmental group locally called the Wolf Pack. I have spent a lot of the last couple of years working on sustainable energy and getting off of oil and gas, et cetera. I am exploring whether this parcel could be all electric homes. That is not cheap to do. It's not as cheap as many environmentalists present it as being, but it is something that I'm exploring. As I say, I'm not promising that, but that could be another environmental component here for everybody to get behind.
But if you sell it to someone, it's their decision, right?
Not necessarily. It depends what the contract says.
Oh, okay. You mean
That's-
writing it into the
You're
contract?
complicating your life, Dave.
Yeah, that's depends how they zone it.
Well, there are a lot of things that it depends upon, and it would be perhaps complicating my life. I'm trying to illustrate to this group that I care about the same stuff you do. And I don't know if it's economically feasible. I don't know if there's a market in Dexter. Right now in Ann Arbor, they're breaking ground on an all-electric community, Viridian. But it is something I'm exploring. The most important thing for me is getting Dexter going on annexation and moving many hands forward on site plan submission to Scio and getting both processes underway. It's a fabulous piece of ground. I'm well aware of, I call it the corridor between Zeeb Road and Marshall Road, not Marshall, excuse me, Baker Road. You have accumulated some good parcels there, and this certainly is strategic relative to those parcels. I want it to happen, and in all of the plans that we have presented, and Barry is aware of this, preserving the woods and the wetlands within the woods and the piece on the west side has always been part of our plan. Many Hands now creates this northern green area, so it's a little more land than I was originally intending to preserve. Would I sell the whole thing for conservation? Yes, but I go back to my wisecrack. You can't afford it. It won't appraise for that purpose for what.
Well, exploring that contingency that you have in your mind as to how these things have to happen at once, Dave. I'm wondering, what is the damage? It looks like Many Hands is ready to go. We're very interested. And you know, the idea that we have to wait for Dexter, which sounds like maybe it's gonna take a lot longer if funds are not brought into the whole thing. What if Dexter decides, no way, we're gonna antagonize Scio. We're not sure we're gonna give you all the remaining capacity of our water and sewer. So there's a really nice section of property which suddenly plummets in value, right? You can't service it. So,
You want to talk about a fire sale here with me?
well, not now. But I guess I'm wondering about the contingency not happening for you, but we still want the green part here. Doesn't it make sense that you tie up that part of it, get a considerable amount of your capital out of it, and then present to Dexter this wonderful surrounding greenery that enhances the value, protected forever for those people who would come into your electric community?
Yeah, 2 out of 3. It's like 2 out of 3 ain't bad, so why not?
2 out of 3 ain't good enough. End of,
All right.
end of discussion. Again, I'm the right guy for this group, for Scio, for Dexter to deal with. I am not the evil real estate developer. I'm a 42-year resident of this township. I live right up the road on Zeeb. The pathway goes through my front property there. I'm your guy. Now we've got to make it work. And back to your questions, well, they're all reasonable questions. I'm not going to agree to anything other than what I've said. We're starting the process. I think we'll all know pretty quickly if Dexter objects within the kinds of ways that you just described. We'll find out. But I can't sit here today and tell you what I'm going to do about it if those things don't go as I'm hoping. I'll make those decisions when we get there.
And in that vein, I assume the sale of the 87 acres to Many Hands won't work because the economics won't work for them if they don't get some of that back through a conservation easement. Is that probably right?
Actually, the amount of money that they will need to do what they want to do is so large that I'm not sure the conservation easement piece is a deal breaker for them. The site plan approval is a deal breaker. They have to get that. They're not prepared to close today. And furthermore.
Through planning commission, the site plan from planning commission and the same board of trustees.
Right.
Who have some of whom may or may not have certain feelings about the project and annexation. I mean, so this is a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. I think we all can agree that if it could all work out, there are positives. The little benefit sheet I put together here for you, the one pager I did, I think the benefits I listed are all real benefits.
Can I just clarify on the cost benefit side of things? So I'm new to the township's discussion overall, I guess, at some point about annexation. But can you clarify what are as a Scio resident, what are the costs to us to Dexter annexing this land? I mean, I've heard what the clerk has said. I don't know where others.
I think
Yeah, what are the costs to Scio Township residents for annexation?
I think the only cost would be a loss of some tax dollars, and that it's.
It would be the tax base, it would be the tax revenue on 75 houses worth $500,000 apiece.
Okay.
Which
so I
wouldn't
don't-
happen though without.
Or,
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to get my head
someday,
around what
maybe
we're.
300, 400, but then.
Well, let me throw out another one. Now I'll put on the evil real estate developer. I design it with estate-sized lots and we build mansions on this property, which is what's happening in Scio down Morrison Road. And that's another plan. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. We have a plan that will allow me to get out of this thing economically alive. And I think does a lot of positives, conservation wise, more housing wise, and taking care of an underserved population, the developmentally disabled. If people are gonna throw rocks at this, we'll find out, we'll hear what the Scio board says if an approved site plan or a recommended site plan comes before them for many hands. I'm willing to take that chance on many hands. We'll know in the next 90 days whether Dexter is doing what needs to be done on the proposed annexation piece. So I think, by summer, certainly by the end of summer, we'll have a much clearer picture of what the progress is and are we moving toward this positive conclusion or are we facing obstacles?
Could we move toward a compromise with the friendly agreement, like John mentions? I mean, you get water from Ann Arbor, but you live.
I mean, this may or may not be the place to talk about these kind of things.
I mean,
Right,
We-
right.
that would be ideal.
I need to, hold on.
But,
I was told that, and I'm not sure if it was Doug Luan or Will Hathaway, who said to me, the last time you tried to make a change in your sewer district, it took 5 years to get Ann Arbor's approval. Based on my earlier discussions with Dexter, I'm not optimistic that you and Dexter could get that worked out and preserve this as township property on their sewer system.
Sure would be a win-win for everybody. Seems like it'd be worth exploring.
I can't afford to make it happen, and I don't see the political will to make it happen. So
It seems like the 425 agreement's not gonna work, or at least under the present political regime here in the township. Is there the potential in a hostile accession to still work out something to compensate for loss of tax base or to share tax revenue to some extent to sweeten the deal for the relationship between Dexter and Scio? I guess just the word hostile doesn't sound good to anybody, right? So I'm wondering what might be the possibility here to get people on this side of the border in line with, this is still a good idea. It's not going to cost us that much. In fact, we're not going to lose anything.
well, let's talk about the dollars for a second. I think total tax bill for the 237 acres last year was somewhere in the 75,000 level. This isn't the loss of 70 homes. 70 homes can't happen on this parcel without the sewer and water systems. So that's not a fair.
I know, and
You retract.
no, I don't retract it. I think that would be what would be them giving up someday down the road. I mean, that's not money lost today.
The money lost today is the property tax money. And I don't believe it's $15,000. I think it would be slightly less than that if we just
Land, it ain't much.
prorate the taxes. So in exchange for this list of benefits for both Scio and the region, it seems to me to be an inconsequential amount of money being lost. Again, I brought the concept of a 425 agreement and there wasn't political acceptance of it. I'm not going to do it again. I brought something else that is complicated, but very interesting and accomplishes a good list of benefits.
So I can tell you that the summer and winter tax bills for 2022 for the east 80-acre parcel, of which the 45 would be potentially annexed to the city. Total tax revenue is $36,000. So divide that by 2, it's $20,000.
Oh, 20,000, okay.
That's what Scio is realizing now. And that's the total tax bill. I would assume, which means
Scio's portion of that is this big.
CIS intermediate school district and the, Dexter schools and, that's the total. amount of
Everybody
tax
gets more than Scio gets out of it. So it's a specious argument to use an economic argument here.
I have another question, that I don't see access to this green thing, a road access.
Well, there's a little bit on Baker Road,
Yeah, right through where the gas line goes.
correct?
Otherwise, it seems to me there isn't a road access.
That's correct.
Is,
I have discussed that very question with Many Hands, and I believe that Many Hands is open to some form of an easement. There hasn't been any formal discussion about this, but this would be an easement that would allow access to the green area, the rear of the parcel from the road. It would allow access into that.
how about from the Brown access area?
Well, the Brown will be accessed through the Dexter Crossing subdivision. Traffic,
That won't be our problem,
right?
It's not Scio,
Right.
And-
No, but I
No.
mean, we gotta have some access to our
Right, and
area.
we've had the discussion with Many Hands, and they are aware of
The need,
the need for access. But we're not worrying about defining that until we see a site plan from them and so forth.
And there would likely be access to this valuable property if it's open to the public from within the subdivision, wouldn't there be?
Yeah, that's what I.
Pedestrian access?
You'd think so.
You would think so, that a trail system
It would be
would,
the selling point.
yeah.
Well, there is now, and the neighbors, they're all love it.
Well, the neighbors trespass, sure, you know.
We encountered several while we looked at it.
All right, yeah, we spent a fair amount of time here. Are there any final questions for Dave?
I want to make sure, that, we talked about what you were interested in accomplishing by coming before the group. I want to make sure that we've done that.
Thank you. I just want to say to the group, I hope you're getting from me a positive attitude about accomplishing something good for the township. And I am not by career or practice a real estate developer. I come with some advantages with 50 years experience in real estate. This is a new experience for me. I think this is logical and the benefits are real. And I'm a conservationist and I'm flexible in terms of new ideas and designing things. I'm going to try to create the best 3 pieces of this puzzle that I can. And you have my word on that. And now we need the political machinery to begin to operate and get this thing off the dime and to a conclusion. I'm proposal number 4 or 5 or 6 on this land in the last 20 years, I think. And let's do something meaningful.
And your discussion with DTE, is that strictly for if pursuing all electric neighborhood, or are you looking at turning this into a solar field or?
No, I'm not looking at turning it into a solar field. It's an interesting concept. I wonder if somebody'd pay enough.
Well, I thought there might be an alternative revenue source.
Put the trees down and put up solar.
I
But
also, for the last 11 years, have 28 solar panels on my house down on Zeb Road. So, I'm with you on that. But we have not had discussions with DTE. And frankly, DTE is not the first place I would be going to have a discussion about the feasibility and the cost of building out an all-electric community here. It's a very interesting question to conjure with. Is there a market? Will people pay a premium for their 2,500 square foot house because it's all electric and it's helping the world to transition off of.
David, or you need to-
All right,
Dave.
thank you, Dave, for coming, yeah.
Let me just ask, you mentioned, Dave, an approach, 425 was the number you mentioned, something like that. An
It's-
approach you tried that
it's a-
failed,
That's Public Act 425,
which is,
that years ago allowed for revenue sharing between a township and a village or a city where land is going to be annexed with public utilities extended to it. So rather than just taking that land out of the township and taking away the vast tax revenue that's coming into it, the $3,000 a year or whatever the hell it is, that there's some sharing of that revenue over some portion of time. So if there can be cooperation between two units of government, you can enter into those kinds of agreements. The anticipation is that that's not going to be, at least not initially, possible. And so the recommendation was for Dave to go to the city of Dexter and request the annexation and let that be the catalyst for the discussions.
Dexter has 425 agreements with one or two townships. I think they even have one with you, maybe involving property where the new high school was built, but I know they have one with Webster. It's just a vehicle. It's the friendly annexation versus John's word, the hostile annexation.
All right,
Okay.
thank you
Thanks,
for
Dave.
coming, Dave. We'll certainly be in touch. Keep it up.
And again, you don't have to hurry. I think the next 90, 100 days are going to be interesting, and I'll keep communicating with Barry as to how we're doing on other fronts. Because again, not to diminish anything here, this is the easiest piece of the puzzle. And even knowing your budget constraints, I know those perfectly well from the NATAC side. Those are real, but I wish the other two pieces were as easy as the conservation side. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, continue on with our agenda then. Reports of other commissions. Somebody attend the planning commission? We have, maybe John did.
Are these cookies for like decoration?
Conversation. I brought these wondering if we were gonna have another budget conversation. I thought I needed something to save ourselves. Yes, these are ginger molasses cookies from Crust.
Yes, we had some of those at work and they are
Really amazing. I know this.
Yeah, so good.
And technically, I'm not supposed to be sharing food here, so don't make a mess,
Nope.
please.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
is this from you?
Yeah,
That was nice.
Not
So
homegrown.
good.
You're welcome.
Any report from the planning commission for something relevant to the LPC?
No, sustainability report, I drafted that, we're gonna be taking a look at the PUD. And I look at the agenda and reserve the right to point something out, but not right now.
Okay.
We're an hour, 20 minutes into our first item.
Yes.
Okay, Parks, Pathways and Preserves.
We met yesterday, the Uplands project, which is sidewalks in that neighborhood, is about to begin pretty soon. Marshall Park, these heavy rains, not just Marshall Park, but these heavy rains have brought water into a lot of our preserves and parks that have covered the trail in certain areas. And so they're trying to figure out what to do with that. They're kind of walking them after the rain and kind of marking out possibilities and they're starting at square one though. They're trying to figure out how to address water issues. And then,
God, there's so many trees coming down. It'd be nice if they could chip the wood and use them for the trails.
I'm sure they'll figure out something. It'll be different for different sites. And then they're having this really cool thing, which I don't know if this works for us, but I like the idea. They're having pre-meeting office hours, at least 4 times a year. For the public to just for residents to just come and ask questions and give suggestions and get feedback. So there's more involvement from residents than just a 3-minute comment with no response.
So it's conversation with Anna.
With the whole, with Anna for sure, because she'll be here, but with also, they hope that others of us will come and just participate. So I thought that was a great idea.
Good idea.
It's ambitious. All right, thank you. Board of Trustees, did you accomplish anything on Tuesday?
Yeah, we got out before 9:30.
Come on.
God.
And, well, so, in the past few, since we met last, the budget 23-24, the budget's been approved. I know there was a little bit of a sore spot with some of the organizations who weren't used to the cost allocation figures that were part of the budget this year. They'll be based on actual, so, you know, Will jokingly said, we'll write one check, so we'll just have very little taken out. Will Weber did, you know, we'll try to keep our costs down in that regard, but so that the budget went through. We have a finalist for the finance director that we're interviewing. We hired an IT person. What's been a controversial thing that we're dealing with are a couple developments, Heritage Woods, which is just down the road a piece from the parcels that we've been talking about. Where like a senior living place is gonna go in, but they have municipal water but they don't have sewer. So they're gonna put in, or they're proposing to put in a private sewer system, something like Loch Alpine has. And that's, you know, the protections that need to be in place and whether or not that's gonna get passed. There's also a couple neighbors who live on an access road and MDOT access road for Baker Road who are going to be impacted. And they want to sell their parcels to the developer or the developer buy them, and they haven't been able to negotiate a price. So they're kind of interposing some objections. Arbors Grove, which is a development across near Park Ridge Condos on Zebe Road, across from the French Country Estates there. And that's, they're gonna 46-acre parcel. If I said 46, I think I misspoke, 4.6 acre. So, you know, take out a lot of the trees, leave some and put in denser condos. So there's even some differences of opinion within the Park Ridge community. There's a group that's against it, and there's a group, I think, that can live with it or are okay with it. So there's some internal discussions that they're having. We got a fire village coming in the fall. There's discussions now. We went into closed session about road SAD money. In 2013, there was a 10-year $85 parcel SAD money for maintenance of roads, and that is up. So there's some money, but there are still roads that are listed on the original list from 2013 that need additional maintenance or additional work. So should that money be used to maintain those roads going forward, or should it be somehow divvied up and returned to residents? But then we have to decide what are we going to do for road funding? So that's a source of some discussions on the board. And then in a good development across the street, 300 North Zebe, that was approved for a tax abatement, and that's going to be a brownfield. So we're trying to get an important Alden B. Dow designed structure that's one of the gateways to the township in much better place. So that's a positive thing to report. That's it.
Are they gonna keep the Dow building?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's the whole idea?
Good bones, good structure. Yeah, there's to extend my report unnecessarily, but there's internal pollution, volatile VOC. So you either gotta see if it's narrow enough that you can break out the concrete, get it out of there, excavate it, and then ship it off site, or whether it's so widespread that you got to cap it and vent it. So, you know, the people that know more about that than I do are going to deal with that. And then there's also a pond out there, kind of near the freeway. Don't fish in that pond, by the way, because that's a brownfield site where they used to, you know, back in the day, you just kind of rinsed or did whatever with the water on site. So that's not a good place. It's not a good place environmentally. So they need to either drain the pond, put the water somewhere, get the clay and the other stuff out there, put it down, put the water back, or you cap it so that it in situ, just stays there. So, that's what the brownfield is for. Thank you.
That was in the newspaper today,
No?
that property was gonna be developed.
No. Okay.
Yes, just, yeah, develop is one way of saying it. It's not, but it's not gonna be raised and, new structures or things like that.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, John. Sustainability Task Force, I know you've been busy, haven't you?
Yeah, the Sustainability Task Force has prepared a draft report, which it wishes to circulate and wants folks to read, everybody, and offer suggestions. And it's quite a comprehensive report. I think you will be interested in all the issues that have been brought up and discussed. And frankly, I'm blown away with what I read.
Great.
Is it on the township website?
Oh, I was gonna
I
find out
can
where
just
it is.
send it around you all. It might be there, but happy to.
Yeah.
I think
Email link.
you find it by going to, on the website and then going to the planning commission? Or maybe, or no, there's a sustainability category. And it's there. If not.
So how many people here are on the Sustainability Task Force? You are. You as well, Jenny?
We are,
And
yeah.
Liz, you seem to know what's going on. No, you're not.
No.
Well, aren't we well represented on that? I look forward to seeing.
Yeah, I think Marty and Tim stacked the deck by asking me to join, or encouraging me to apply to join this commission.
All right, good for you. I look forward to seeing that. Going to old business, just the Buy, Protect, Sell Subcommittee. Just for your information, I heard from Stephanie King Cohen regarding their apiary proposal. Have we done anything? And I sent a reply response saying, we just don't have the framework with the LPC right now to deal with your request, and we'll let you know if we do. But where are you going with the subcommittee? What do you
I
think
think
is your
it's-
direction?
Yeah, I think it's more that we have not made a determination that that property is suitable for buy, protect, sell at this time. It's not that her proposal is better or worse. It's that we haven't, Wren's was clearly an agricultural property that needed to be farmed.
So-
And this is,
This is after the
wildlife
fact too.
habitat.
It wasn't part of the original conception, which Ren's was, right?
Yes, right.
Buy, Protect, Sell was the way it works.
That
whereas
could
this is-
happen at some
Yeah.
point, but it hasn't yet.
It's like somebody
Okay.
knocking on your door asking to buy your house and it
Yeah,
wasn't for
exactly.
sale,
That's right.
it's just, it's not
It's
available.
true, it's true.
That's what it is. It's not, it has nothing to do with Stephanie's proposal.
So, all right, so just the clarification, and I'm not pushing you to do anything because I think I understand why you've decided not to, but should we define a mechanism by which someone like Stephanie or anybody else could say, hey, here's a piece of township property, we've got an interesting idea for it. Here's how it would go, how is it that we could go about getting permission? I mean, do we need a mechanism like that, or is that creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist?
I think if you open up that door, you need a full-time person to manage people coming to
That's
you
right.
from every direction. I think
Yeah.
if we want to make land available, we make it available. And if you're offering to buy something that's not available, it's like, I'm sorry, it's not
Yeah,
available.
yeah, because we're here in the business of conserving land.
Mhm.
And so if we determine that a piece should be divided up and farmed by different people or could be used in different ways, that's one thing. But otherwise, we look at, selling off pieces of township land to this person, that person, this person. So the buy, protect, sell provides a framework for us to make that determination.
Yeah.
Right, so first thing we have to decide is whether or not we want to sell that piece of property. This group.
Yeah, I guess we could take a vote on it, I mean, instead of,
Well,
will decide that.
I hear the almost unanimous opposition to accepting this proposal.
Well,
But-
We already, yeah.
But here-
particularly since
but-
we didn't put out an RFP.
No, I understand, and I'm not trying to be defensive of this submission, just because I've seemed to have become the point person for it, and I was trying to
Yeah.
pleasant to her. But I also know that what's resonated here is this notion of encouraging unique, small-scale agriculture. You know, boutique agriculture, community gardens. I mean, I know you're big into this, Tim, and you kind of sold me on the idea we should be looking for ways that we offer opportunities for people to engage in agriculture and food production without having to go to the scale of owning a tractor and a lot of land and, you know, expensive equipment. And I don't know if our program and the lands that we acquire offers an entree into that in some way. All right, I agree. We can't do it ourselves. We're not set up to administer this. We're all volunteers. We don't really have time to.
And
We can do it through buy, protect, sell though. I mean, we can make a determination that this property is suitable for farming or for dividing up.
with the Lombardy type housing around there, I think there's gonna be a lot of neocotinoids on their lawns and those bees will die. Quite frankly, I think it's ill advised.
Well, this would be a way to educate the local people in the virtues of not using, you know, cottons.
That's
Well,
what
maybe
she's,
if people are coming invited onto the property. right?
That was their idea, was it was an educational facility too.
Can I ask like a big picture? What makes something appropriate or not appropriate without respect to this property for buy, protect, sell? Like, is it like, oh, it's hardwoods, we're not gonna buy, protect, sell that? Or, oh, that's farmland, we're gonna like, what physical attributes with a given parcel make it a good candidate?
Well,
if it's been designated as a high priority area for one thing.
Yeah, I think Barry is the one to answer that question. We've done it one time. And so, you know, and it was a way to acquire property and not hold on to it. And still be
right.
operating within our mission.
This one's a little trickier because the parcel is a certain size, it's on the new map you gave us, and they want a subset of that, right? A smaller plot of that.
They do.
And like, was it you, Lisa? Someone mentioned, I mean, the fair way might be to have the Board of Trustees approve a resolution that asks for request for proposal for some agricultural use of a component of that land or part of that parcel. And then it gets approved or not approved, or people bid or they don't bid. You know, somebody might have a better plan than bees. I mean, you know.
Right, exactly.
No, it gets complicated. I completely agree. And,
But are we just saying we don't want anything there, or we just want to buy it just for the sake of holding it? Not that that's not a laudable thing to do.
So, back to the big picture, the township has put together a citizen group that's called the Sustainability Task Force, right? Recognizing the necessity to be more sustainable for the future, right? And so there's a number of components to that: open land, food system, active food system, and all of those touch what the LPC does because of these pieces of property. And we own a piece of property that is, you know, probably that has been farmed. And because we recognize that it does the township good to have a stronger local food system, not just gardeners and like that, but people raising 10 acres of
Commercial.
cabbage or something like that, that serves the local community. You know, actively provides food for we recognize that the food system can get interrupted and has in the past few years because of COVID.
And as it
Right,
relates to
and
this
so the-
property,
Pardon me?
so you're saying,
Well, so
What I was
it's,
gonna propose, Tim, building on what you're saying, is that if we haven't done this already, it might help us all to take a closer look at the plan and to think about our conservation goals, our land preservation goals in relationship to what the priorities are that we've elevated.
which plan are you talking
This is the
about?
the Sustainability Climate Action Plan.
right, and not only the sustainability group, but all the groups, you know, where does that piece of ground, I'm talking about the, what is it, 20 acres, something like that.
On this property?
That, that one piece of ground that the folks
The
want.
corner parcel?
I think that's a great idea. You know, look, we already have the master plan and we pinpoint environmentally the high priority areas. Layer that with the sustainability, and I feel like we could have a retreat almost to really, instead of answering this parcel by parcel.
And that would help with us determining where we want to ask for our proposals for
Right.
Right.
a particular piece. And then people are competing for one piece and they're submitting proposals to, for that piece.
And it'd be a good way to answer people like Stephanie.
Yes.
You know, just, so
Yeah.
I love that idea and I think it's important enough that it maybe should be a separate like retreat powwow kind of
You know,
thing.
that we're not ready to.
So
make a
Will and John and, you know, so, you, me and you were part of that small group and we limited it to 3 so that we didn't have to make.
Well, I'm not looking for more meetings.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm not looking for more meetings to go to, but
No. I just tell you why it's only
Okay.
3 people. But what we've been talking about is a little bit about this piece of land, but what we've been talking about is let's say we do decide to take bids on it and we're looking for some specific use for that land, like agriculture.
why not an RFP that just asks people to submit something consistent with their buy-sell agricultural use? Whether it's soybeans, whether it's hemp, just kidding, whether it's bees, whether it's chickens, whether it's some local farming aspect to that. And then, you know,
We more or less did that. And then
Okay.
we evaluated that. And so what this little group is doing is trying to make very clear and solid the text that we choose the right bid.
But we haven't done it for Sycred though. We haven't done
for this
what
parcel.
we haven't done it for this parcel that John's proposing.
No, I'm not proposing.
I
I'm
mean,
saying
not
what
that
it,
you're
I
saying
just,
that
what, you know, like, if we buy this parcel and buy, sell, protect for some agricultural use, and that doesn't necessarily, to me, mean putting a seed in the ground. It could be raising chickens, it could be having bees, it could be
Yes.
something that's, something you might see in a farmer's market, or, you know.
All of that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're running late and this is subcommittee stuff, but maybe you're inspired to think more about what the possibilities are for
Well, are
inserting
we-
these ideas into
yeah.
sustainability plan.
Well, no, I just was wondering, are we asking you all in the sustainability people to kind of look at, I mean,
Yeah, I
that would be
think that
really
would make
kind of
sense.
helpful.
Yeah, I think, yes.
Absolutely.
What
I
do you-
don't
what do you all
we've
think
thought
about
that particularly.
And then bringing
What-
it back to
what-
us.
but what's running through my mind is that that's a pretty big property beside her.
Yeah, it is.
And if you cut off one little corner of it, well, to what extent does it affect the rest of the property
Right,
and the usability of it?
That's part of the,
And it seems to me that what we need from you guys on the committee is to think about, you know, the what properties do we have where it might be likely that that we would put up 1 or 2 for sale?
So we start
What would
with
be
our
the criteria?
Yeah, I think the criteria is what I'm just not clear about. I haven't
Yeah.
Well,
dug
maybe that's
into-
what your
yeah.
subcommittee should define, is the criteria for future properties and maybe use this as an
Being
example.
informed by the sustainability
Yeah,
plan and
yeah.
our priorities, and I'd be happy to.
Sustainability
connect
is
with
a
you all more on
level
that.
where you guys.
We've never had that
Looking at
layer
it,
on
Sure,
it.
make sure they do what they're supposed to
Yeah.
do.
It's a good idea.
So
All right,
Okay.
sorry.
do we need a motion or some action item on that?
I don't think so. Janine's gonna just take care of it.
Well, I'm gonna connect with, it sounds like I'm connecting with your committee.
Yeah.
Is that right?
We just have to have, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're
Well-
really helpful to.
Well,
overlap those
actually,
two
he's on that little committee.
Yeah, he's
So
your
that's
fault.
our sustainability connection.
yeah, Will,
I work for Tim.
Trying to move on here, but one
Just
more
kidding.
thing.
Will, John, isn't the first step the LPC recommending to the board that we'd like to sell that 10-acre piece or whatever? it is?
I don't know that.
And that's
we want to
first step,
sell it.
because we have an idea that should be farmed.
Well, 10 acres, it's a big property. It's more than 10 acres.
Yeah.
And it might be just recommending that the Board of Trustee issue requests for proposal, bids for some agricultural use of a portion of that property, whether it's 1 acre or whether it's all of it, you know. You know, and with it, you know, includes retaining a conservation easement that it can't be used for something else down the future or whatever, that the access to the Honey Creek and the trail system along Honey Creek, or I'm just saying maybe, I'm not pitching that right now, but I'm saying, and then with the proviso, you know, it's you might not get, we might say no to everybody. We might not like anything.
And isn't there some benefit to just let something be? I mean,
Yes,
we've all
of
walked
course.
that property.
Of course.
And there, it's one of the few places that you can
Of
see
course.
some native species and grasses, and it's quite fulfilling to not
Yeah.
rip out all the native.
But what if the just
Sorry.
no, but hypothetically, what if the beekeepers want to put in more natives there, to even more natives for their bees that the.
Yeah, they talked about that.
We have to be able to supervise that then and make sure they're gonna, you know, whoever's proposing something does what they said they're gonna
How
do.
many acres is that?
I think they called the question
The
on
whole
us.
parcel is
So they're,
23.
they kind of pushed us all into thinking about something that's useful for us to think about.
This is true.
Right, you know what, and I think we've.
And I'm not-
Here tonight, and we're gonna
I'm
move
not
on.
pushing for the project, I'm just.
There are lots of rich suggestions here, and I think if you guys break into your separate groups and think about it further, it will come up again.
So, Will, I'd like
Stephanie
to
will
see
keep
us
asking.
move toward a decision to sell that 23 acres and put the requests for
Well,
proposals
let's
out.
let the committee have the full discussion of that, and if next meeting it comes to where that seems like a good idea,
Okay.
let's look at that specifically.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think Barry has an RFP.
Right, so it's probably.
All right, is
He's got
there anything more important before we move on to budget and cost allocation issues? All right, here's the bad news. John can back me up on this one. Basically, the clerk got together with some hired finance guns to come up with a way to acquire more money for the township
Can you have them?
from, for example, our millage fund. So the purported data-driven, proportional, scientific, and fair system taxes our budget, our funds in the bank, shall we say, to the tune this year, if it's the same this year as last year, about $31,000, directly out of money that would go for purchases and our internal expenses. And we had quite an argument and the issues were put out, and John came to our defense on the Board of Trustees when this was brought up.
He sure did.
We had support from John,
tried.
from Donna Palmer, the treasurer, and help me, John, who was the other one?
Will Hathaway.
Will Hathaway, yeah, Will is enthusiastic. Kathleen Knoll, and of course Jessica and Jillian were silent but absolutely opposed to making any modification. So the result is we have less money to spend.
Oh my
And
God.
it's decided,
How much?
but
less?
there's the possibility of rethinking it. It's not set in stone, but it's set in wet concrete. Let's put it that way.
I thought what they proposed was more like 60,000.
We trimmed it from like 38 to 31 when we looked at the variation in the amount of money that sits in the pooled funds. But the one way that we can reduce the cost is to spend the money rather than have it in the bank, so to speak. But according to, unfortunately, we don't know exactly what the formula is. It seems like it's in Jessica's head that, it's just gonna be data-driven, proportional and fair, but don't tell us how it works. Open meeting, I'm sorry to say this, but that's
I
the
was
way I
surprised
feel
no
about it.
one challenged that.
So listen, I will say in support of the clerk, what she did is she took a look at the cost allocation and she relied on work done by Woodhill Group, which is a CPA firm that advises municipalities on financing and developed the model that they used. She also then ran it by Rod Taylor, who works for Maynard Costerison, who's been brought in to kind of help. So she didn't go rogue and just pull a number out of the air. There was data that was supplied by a CPA firm and kind of vetted, approved, looked at by another. And it wasn't done, it might have the sting of being done out of spite, but it was done to other boards and commissions and kind of everybody. Now, I made the points that, wait a minute, we use Barry for stuff, we use outside counsel, we use a lot, our own appraiser, we use, I don't want to repeat the arguments that I made, but in defense of the majority of the board who voted for it, they were trying to be fair to.
Wasn't a majority.
It was 3-3, wasn't it? Yeah, and there was one person not there.
Right.
Okay, yeah, and in support of the plurality, the tie vote, those who approved it, that's what they would say, were they here to say why they did it.
Yeah, it surprised me that you could approve something without having a majority, something
How
that
did that-
significant.
Well, there wasn't a majority to change it.
Wait a minute,
But
so
why
it was a
didn't- why didn't the
tie?
other side win?
How can you do that?
Yeah, right.
I think there wasn't, well, there wasn't, I didn't move to change it because I didn't have 4 votes. You know what I mean? So it was proposed in the budget was approved, and I didn't have the juice to get it changed.
Well,
The
okay,
votes.
can I say something? It is what it is.
Right.
And I don't think we should be whining and crying about it. I think we should, do what we can to mitigate our loss, but, I mean, we gotta support the county and, the township and, we're an arm of the township, so. I don't fault the clerk either. I think it was, it made sense for her to explore the idea of.
This made sense to her to come to us with this a week before the event.
That was a
And
little.
we didn't receive any real description of it, just here's what it's gonna cost you. So, there wasn't an opportunity to apply reason to the whole issue. Or question, what is data driven? What is scientific? What is proportional? None of that was really brought into
I
the
didn't get
discussion.
any sense of what the,
And to have a
2%
coordinated
represented.
action plan?
I don't know. I realize, yeah, we're victims of, what happened, or we have to accept it, but I don't know. I guess I feel like we are all fiduciaries here as volunteers who should be looking after the money that the taxpayers who voted for the millage have accorded to us. And to suggest this is going to some general purposes in the township, which are not at all related to what our tasks are, or services that we consume, or products that we consume, or salaries that we pay. I mean, these are the expenses that they have to come up with money to pay for. And, all right,
So the budget was
I'll stop.
approved, but
I'll stop.
can we ask for a revote on that matter since there wasn't a majority?
There was
that,
a
John?
majority. The budget passed.
Yeah.
The budget passed with the cap as proposed, built in. The budget passed. There wasn't support to change the cap.
Right, and the
What
citizen
I-
has
as
proposed
proposed.
together.
Yeah.
what I'm wondering
Yes.
about is the basic notion that a township should charge the units, the various units that are connected to it for administrative services. It would seem to me as though our tax is to provide a township, and that the various committees like planning and like Parks and Rec and us it is not a given that the administrative function of the township be funded by taxing the units that work there. I mean, it's just a vision, it's a different vision of
No,
how the
yeah.
township works with the groups. And
All right.
she's
You know
brought
what?
up a new one, and
You vented, I vented, others vented.
yeah.
We have to move on. Barry, we haven't left you much time, but what would you like to say in the remaining 10 minutes?
Well, I'll refer to the open session report. I have in front of me a pile of paper that was submitted to the United States Department of Agriculture, and subsequent to that, there was another document that Mr. Hathaway signed. That's supposedly the last thing that they need in order to provide us with the $868,550 that they still owe us for the RENs. Conservation easement. So there's been some movement on that. Hopefully it'll actually come through soon. Currently, we have about $1 million available in our account.
Not including that.
That's correct. Doesn't look like the Lake Erie RCPP application process is going to be, it will not be at this point available to us until the fall. But the hope is to have an application round for that in October. It's possible that the federal ASEP, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, will have another deadline. There was one last November. Not all the funds were used. Some additional funds have come into it. There's about $900,000 that could be utilized by local entities. The state's coordinator for that program has made a request to hold a special application round. Haven't heard if that's been approved. If it is, we'll have probably a 15-day window to submit any applications, and I've got one in mind that we'll talk about in closed session. As John mentioned, the budget did pass. We still have some questions about a couple of items that showed up in our expenditures, and Will and I will work on that. And I provided you with a copy of the annual report. If that looks good, we should submit it on to the Board of Trustees. Anybody has any comments on that, let me know, ASAP, and if not, then doesn't have much. I'll send it out. It's a one-pager, including a couple of tables and the protected lands map. If it looks good, then I'll send it on to John to be able to forward on to the Board of Trustees. And in regards to Delhi Woods, still, I haven't heard anything out of them. I haven't contacted them, so it's still hanging out there. Okay, that's all for the open session.
All right, we have a motion to go into closed session.
So
Second,
For the purpose of, we need to put what it's
for
for.
the purpose of considering discussions about property under consideration.
Yes. Good enough.
And we
So
can have
it's
a-
Marty, and who's our second?
I'll support that motion.
John?
Okay, moved and seconded. We have to
Okay,
call roll.
Janine?
Voting how?
We'll do a roll call
Yes.
on this one. Marty?
yes,
Lisa? Tim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Will?
Yes,
And I'm yes.
okay, motion carries.
I'm stopping the recording,
Good.
but I'm the only participant through Christy Aiken's log
All right.
on this right now.
Nobody had, are we back in?
Technically
All right.
here.
Anybody there ready to come in?
No,
All right, but we're recording. All right, so we are now in open session. We have two motions. Would somebody like?
I'm gonna make I'm gonna move that the LPC recommend to the Board of Trustees the approval that they approve $3,500 for the appraisal of property number 2020-7.
Okay,
Support.
moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, well, I'll agree.
You need a
Motion
voice vote
passes
for that?
unanimously.
Do we need a voice vote? Do we need a roll call for that?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
And I'll make the motion to,
Okay, and that's Lisa.
to,
For, it would be to recommend that the board explore further donation of property
Yes.
at the intersection of what is it? again?
Wagner.
And Dexter and Arbor Road.
Okay,
but why do we need the board approval of
Well,
that?
basically to engage some professional services to look at it like a lawyer.
Oh,
Yeah, why
Okay.
not have the board do that? rather
For
than
liability.
We pay for it.
sure, let's just pay for it.
you're on the record.
I'd like to get more administrative support, by the way, for our school.
Come back to that and definitely.
I
that's in
support
order.
that motion. I support Lisa's motion.
Okay.
All right,
And
moved and
John?
seconded that we seek additional support for possible acceptance of a donated property at the corner of Dexter and Wagner. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay,
Opposed?
and one opposed, okay, fair enough.
Are you opposed?
No, but you should ask for a
Yes.
vote.
Oh, I see.
Unless you counted all the ayes.
There were no opposed, it was unanimous.
You're still supposed to ask even if you have more.
All right, and now, let's see, one other matter. Hmm?
Shall we move to quit?
I move to adjourn.
No, one more thing. Who's gonna be at the next meeting? Everybody likely to be present at the May meeting?
What's the date?
Help, anybody have it handy?
No.
Yes, May 11th, isn't it?
11th, yes.
11th?
Oh, yeah, I'll be here.
May 11th, okay. Anybody not likely? Good. 4 o'clock. See you then. All right, accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved.
Second?
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we adjourn. My apologies for keeping you late.
My apologies.